Hello there, and thanks again for buying my UX audit gig. So we're just going to go through 5 pages on this website. I usually have some specific ones in mind that I do for e-commerce sites. So I'll just go off of that. We'll start with the home page, then we will go through a category page, a product page, probably like your contact and or about page, and something else as well. So let's go ahead and get started, and we'll figure out what makes sense for that last page. So first things first, you have this pop-up, and it gets in the way of the content before I have a chance to actually see it. And so um, Google has made it so that this is actually a penalty from a search engine optimization perspective. I have this article that I'm going to send you that explains it in a little bit more detail using Google's own words. So I won't belabor the point too much, just to say that this is not going to do you any favors on Google. It's also not a very good user experience to not be able to even see what the website is about before asking for my email. I understand that pop-ups can convert well, which is why in this article I'm going to send you, I will share some other ideas for how you can use the same tactic, but would recommend against this. As far as a value proposition, I would give this a better title besides just newsletter. Do you have a name for it? What's the general nature of what you're going to send? You talk about, I think this part is really powerful, saying that 1,000 people are subscribed, but this part not as much, who get free and fresh content delivered automatically each time we publish. Your brand isn't really a publisher, it's an e-commerce store. You're selling products, and so any content you publish inevitably is to sort of drive people to make sales. And I think it's kind of almost disingenuous to act like you're doing them a favor by sending them free and fresh content. I think it would be better to say, be alerted when sales happen or new products drop, or, guides for how to wear our clothing, or discounts when you sign up. And you don't have to use a discount, but just to give you some ideas of what to say instead. So we'll continue on to the home page. So you have a slider, and UX professionals often say that sliders are a UX issue. It's because they're a little distracting. As you can see on the screen here, this slider changes pretty quickly. I barely have enough time to read the words. And it's also kind of just random. This one doesn't have a photo. The next one looks like there's a photo that's off the screen or something, it's blurry. And then there's one that does have a photo that looks like it could be your clothes, but it's really cut off. And I'm wondering if that has something to do with my screen resolution. So just so you know, I'm using a Mac. I'm using a Chrome browser. My Mac is a 28-inch screen, but I'm using half of it for this screen recording. So this is probably pretty comparable to what you'd see on a Mac 13 to 15-inch laptop or something like that. But that's a problem, that it seems like there might be some display issues with the images in here, and the fact that it's a slider and it's distracting. So one suggestion I would give to you is to have a hero image instead. So not have a slider, but just have one image. And what you should focus on in that hero image area is what you do, who you serve, and what makes you different from the competition, what makes you unique. And then you can also still have the shop now call to action. You should still merchandise stuff down here to get people shopping, but by doing that, it makes it easier for people to understand what you do and if it's relevant to them before they do anything else. Because ultimately, you really don't want people on your site poking around if they're not a good fit for your business, because then they're going to mess up all your other measurements. If you have Google Analytics installed, it's better for them to either determine if this is for them or to bounce immediately, in terms of just having the rest of your metrics making sense from who's actually a member of your audience. This menu, again, I think it's a resolution thing. It's the specific width I'm at right now, but since this is probably fairly close to the average resolution that people use to view your website, it's problematic that this is pushing down and is creating a lot of white space. And web design professionals, especially those that focus on conversions, talk about this above the fold area as being really important. Some people would argue, if this is, if above the fold is something that you need to really worry about, because most people will scroll at least a little bit more. But the main point that I want to get across is just that some people will never scroll all the way to the bottom. So just the more information you can give them up here, relative to some of the things I've already said, is certainly useful in, again, just like matching expectations, determining if this person is a fit for the rest of your content, and just like answering basic questions. So white space is just, it's limiting all this extra white space, because this is getting pushed down, is limiting this area and what people can see before they scroll. It's better to just like get straight to the point in this area than to have this be, and it's just like unsightly, I guess, is the design problem here. There's all this like padding, I think, around, or margin maybe, around these menu items, and that's why it's such a huge amount of white space. All right, let's talk about this menu bar up here. So, um, it looks good. I like that you can dismiss it. It might be more useful to you if it persists when you scroll. Not sure. I would say that's probably something to test out. I would maybe like take away the space before the semicolon. It just looks a little bit off in my head. It's weird how some words are capitalized and some aren't. So like off versus sale, why is sale capitalized but off isn't? So be careful with consistency. Subconsciously, when I look at things that are inconsistent, I lose trust, even if I can't tell you why I'm losing trust, but I can see right now that the reason is because of inconsistent, like, title, heading, case. Um, Another thing I like to tell people on these audits is when you talk about free shipping, can you tell me if that code is automatically applied? Do I have to add a code? It seems implied that the code would automatically happen if it's relevant to every order. Although, so it's like, is it free shipping normally, or is it because of this code? So that's another thing to clarify. Sometimes over explaining things is better, because then you get less questions to respond to. And, if people ask you a question and you don't respond in a timely manner, then that can obviously get in the way of conversions. Other than that, this menu looks pretty good. I wonder what this thing is before I clicked on it. I can see now that it's currency, but it's like a widget thing, which makes me think of like settings on my iPhone. It should probably instead be like dollar signs or something like that. I mean, or like a money picture, which, granted, would probably relate to one of these currencies more than another, depending on like the picture or the sign that you use, but it would get the point across that it's currency more so than this widget thing. So another thing you could do is look at websites where people have multiple currencies that you could pay in and see what they're doing to position that element, but the widget isn't doing it for me. A lot of the messaging in your slider is also like super generic, cool fashion tops, and, clothing made for a true contemporary woman. This is just bad English. Keep it classically. It should be keep it classical, I guess. And I don't think there's an apostrophe there. So, might be a good idea to hire a copywriter who can summarize what I've already talked about, which is who you are, what you do, and what makes you different. And anything else that you want to get across here. But right now, I would say that's a conversion killer. The fact that there are obvious sort of like grammar and agreement errors, as well as just super generic text. There's nothing compelling about generic, especially in e-commerce, where a lot of people are constantly innovating. So in order to be considered among the best, you have to, step up your game with stuff like this. All right. The picture is kind of random here. Like, I guess I understand that this is your photo, but can I shop it? When I hover it, it says it goes to like all collections. Um, it seems like it should almost go to like a specific thing. It just kind of looks like a stock photo, I guess, is the problem. And there's no like clear call to action besides just like shop all the collections. But I think you kind of need to, like, you talk about these different pieces here. Um, I think you need to separate out the collections, and it looks like you kind of do that down here. That's more along the lines of what I would expect and what I would want to see. But again, this photo's just not doing it for me. Just reading this. This seems like a good point to put up in the hero image. Like, we design beautiful pieces that can be used in everyday life, such as gardening, traveling, or shopping, but can also be dressed up as formal wear. Something like that. That's not exactly it, but something like that would be an awesome value proposition up here to say that you have pieces that work from day to night and stuff like that. It looks like you forgot to customize that because it has lorem ipsum dummy text in it. Um, so I'm guessing that you would just like merchandise new arrivals here, and I think that's a good idea. I think it's a good idea to have on the front page something like new arrivals, popular products, top brands. Like you'll want to test what's most effective at getting people to click and then buy, but having like one piece next to another versus just the categories is a good way to get people to start shopping. This should say new arrivals, and it's weird that this one has a period but this one doesn't. Again, that inconsistency is going to kill you when it comes to conversions. Are there other categories we could merchandise here? Maybe they're not as big as this, but maybe there's like 3 under it or 4 or something like that. That would give people more like things to shop right away, which again, I think that's kind of the point of an e-commerce homepage. Um, this is good. I like that you have a testimonial. I think you need more than just one. I would have several. I would have maybe like 5 or something because with like e-commerce sites, you just have all sorts of different customers and people will want to see the type of reviews that they're leaving. Okay, again, poor grammar. Most products have free shipping. Most products include free shipping. So that maybe goes against this. This says free shipping worldwide, but again, is that for the sale? Is that always? Make that clear. When you talk about customer support, you should probably direct people to where they can get help. I don't see a live chat, which is what I would assume, both with the icon and with this 24/7 thing. If I send you an email, it's going to take time to get a response. So I don't know if I would call that 24/7. I would maybe instead change that for what the actual response time on average is. And this just makes me lose trust completely between the inconsistencies in capitalization, the poor grammar, and the lack of substantiation. What exactly does this mean? Most secure payment in what way or in comparison to whom? You'll probably want to add a year for the copyright. I think it's all rights reserved. Here's a better value proposition than what you had in your pop-up. So sign up and get $10 off your first order and be the first to know about sales events and news. I would use an Oxford comma there. But yeah, even if you just like copy and pasted that exactly, it would be a huge improvement over what that pop-up was saying. So I think I've torn this homepage to pieces. Let's go ahead and look at a category, maybe this all categories, and then we'll look at a product page. Right, so this is all collections. I'm trying to find like a specific category. Maybe if I do seasonal fashion, that will give me a specific collection. So it looks more or less the same as the last page, but just filtered on this category. I do love that you have filters. I think those are super important for an e-commerce site, especially for an e-commerce site such as this one selling clothing, because there's going to be a lot of different things to look at, versus like a site where they only offer a couple products. This looks like dummy text that was left in, so I'd get rid of that. Are people familiar with these vendors? If they're not, I would put that all the way on the bottom or maybe get rid of it completely. Categories is probably a good place to start, although what I'm confused about is if these categories are relevant to seasonal fashion or to everything. Some spelling errors with accessories. New arrivals with an S, inconsistency again with sentence and title case. Product types, how is that? Okay, I guess I could see how it's different from categories. I don't know, there's something about categories that's still bugging me besides what I've already called out. Like there's no parallelism. Um, so it's like fitness clothing, but a bottom could be part of that. A new arrival could be part of that. So you might have to rethink your categorization so that it makes more sense consistently. I'm not seeing anything under color or size. I don't know if you just haven't added those details to the products yet. If you're not, I mean, you should have size, I would think, at the very least. But if this is not a filter that you could actually search by on the live site, I would take it out. I would get rid of tags for now or make it more of like an optional thing to expand them because I don't know how many products are going to have this tag, for example. You also want to make sure your tags aren't coming across as like spammy, like this is like a random bracket, this is just numbers, this is all caps. Like there's just a ton of inconsistencies in the way that people can filter these products, and that's hurting trust for me is just to even see them. So maybe you want to get rid of the filter completely until you can make it in a way that makes consistent sense. And then there's this, which is also like dummy content that needs to be taken out. So another thing is maybe thinking about putting a header image on each category and a brief description because that's something that can maybe help you rank in relevant search. I like how you have these filters based on pricing and best-selling, featured. I don't know how important alphabetical sorting or like when they were added is. That's something I would test out to see if it's important. You don't want to like dilute this too much so that it's hard for people to use. I would rather focus on like pricing, featured, best selling, maybe not even featured, honestly. I mean, maybe like the date stuff is useful for categorizing stuff by what's new, but I don't know if that's a filter that I would sort by necessarily, if that makes sense. Looks like we could also create a list versus looking at things more, Pinteresty or whatever you want to call it, a grid, um, which is cool, but then the text is kind of cutting off here, so you might want to create custom short descriptions. And you also, again, want to make sure there's consistency because these are all like bullet points where these are like actual descriptions, and so that just looks a little bit sloppy. Let's go ahead and look at a product. All right. So, the sizes are not in order. It should start with small, go to medium, go to large, go to X large, or at least go all the way through, one way or back. But it's like, large isn't next to X large. So it's inconsistent in regards to even them just being in some sort of order. So, help your customers out by just making it obvious. Like, you don't want them to accidentally click one thinking that's large or something without really reading it and then ordering it and then being mad about what they ended up getting. Always good to get, more product images when you can, especially if it's somebody wearing the product. But I think at minimum, when it comes to buying clothes, I need to see like the front and the back. Even for like a sweatshirt, where it seems like they kind of get the idea, I would still, make that effort. There's like a big, I can't even read what that says. More payment options. That's impossible to read. The contrast is awful. So I would like this, make it white text or something like that. What is this? Oh, it's a comparison thing. This must be a Shopify feature because I've noticed it a lot more lately. Um, I don't know if you even like need to display the like SKU because it's just in reference to the sizes, which we can see here. Like, I don't think the customer needs to see this. Maybe it's something you need to have here for like your own inventory tracking purposes, but I would take it away from view on this site so it's not just like cluttering the page. Also, this button, once you fix it, maybe you want to make it smaller. You want to make the text consistent with that buy with GPay. because it kind of looks out of place with how big it is. All right, so I don't know what guaranteed checkout means. Are you trying to say that you can like trust these, or this is what's applicable to your website? Guaranteed is the word that's the problem here. This is a pretty long page for a product page. Um, I mean, this is just sloppy copy here. There's like this big break between the text, even though this doesn't have the same amount of spacing, so inconsistent. We guarantees just it's not capitalized. It should just be guarantee. See, I think you need to edit your product descriptions and make sure that they're not getting in your way. This reviews tab, it needs to have some sort of call to action for people to leave a review. There's nothing under size chart, so that's just a bad user experience for there to be nothing there. And there's also nothing under shipping policy. So again, if you're not using a feature right now, take it out, even if you do plan to use it later, because it's going to be a bad experience for people in the meantime. Again, you have lorem ipsum text. I think it's good that you have related products. And I guess they do make sense as related because they're like jackets, like overwear, outerwear, whatever you call. And then it looks like this is the same sort of idea, but you forgot to take it out. So again, just make sure to get rid of that stuff. All right, let's look at your contact page and we'll look at one other page. All right, so I mean, you need like a professional email if this is going to be a professional business. So I would like go to G Suite, use your smashingshapes.us URL and say, Hassan at smashingshapes.us or something like that, or contact or shop or help or whatever it is, but not your Gmail. I would also probably not put your phone number here unless it's like a Google Voice number, because you're gonna get like a lot of prank calls basically if it's your own number, and you won't be able to screen them or shut people out as well as if you use a Google Voice number. We need some like capitalization here. But if this is like your actual home address, I wouldn't put that here at all. If it's like if you also have a physical retail place, I would add this, but I'd also add a map and encourage people with some sort of call to action to come in and see things for themselves. And what else would I say about this page? I think the last thing that really needs to happen here is setting expectations for when people can get a response. We kind of already talked about that with that like 24/7 customer service or whatever. Like just be honest, be straightforward, and set expectations. If it's 24 hours from receipt of a message, if it's 48 hours, I don't think it matters so much as that you're honest and that people have an idea of when to hear back from you. So, I think those are actually all the main pages. So with your like last page that you get, I'll just suggest a page that I think you need, which is an about page. Um, and the point of the about page is to kind of just like tell a story and create a human connection between you as the business owner and the person visiting your website who's trying to determine if they want to buy something from you. And so besides all the other stuff that we talked about with trust signals and just helping people understand what the brand is about, I think that the about page is a good place to tell your story. Why did you start this brand? What makes it different from others out there? And showing like, a headshot of you, a quick bio of you. Is there anyone else on the team that people should be introduced to? At the end of the day, like there's so many faceless e-commerce brands, and I think to some extent people are afraid to like put their face out there even, but I think that honestly that's what gets the sales. people feeling some sort of human connection or some sort of like tie to the story that you're trying to tell. And so, give them more information. But I think that in addition to that, if that's going to be effective, you need to also be telling your brand story on this page and helping people understand why they should buy from you over, other people who are selling clothes online. Right now, it doesn't really come across as like a unique website with like unique offerings. So you need to do a little bit better of a job of just positioning your brand in this, vast e-commerce ecosystem of people who are also selling similar things. And that's the hardest part of it, but that's where you're going to be able to make sales.